Hi, I'm Sally Rossiter. I'd like to talk to you a little about the changes that we've been experiencing energetically in the last few months. Astrologically, we know that there's amazing stuff going on, 7 planets, I believe, in retrograde. But the energetics of it is something else entirely. I do interdimensional healings, and recently I have been seeing in the fifth dimension a lot of people beginning to claim their light bodies, also known as their Merkaba vehicles. So Spirit tells me that this is an evolutionary step for us as human beings, and the claiming of the fifth dimensional body or the light body makes it possible for us to actually begin shall we say, navigating and exploring the fifth dimension intentionally and more truthfully. So before people are claiming their fifth dimensional bodies, it seems as though there is some challenge for us in the third dimension, in the physical. One of the things that we're experiencing is almost an absence of light, as though there is some kind of, not exactly disconnect, but minimization of our own relationship with our own light. And it causes us to feel quite drawn into or locked into our human selves. And also it creates difficulties, stress, blockage, etc. It seems as though before this happens, our consciousness is essentially being bared. And what that means, what I understood, is that it is the stripping away of the remaining energies, patterns, whether they are past life, current life, whether they are familial or come from other forms of conditioning, which essentially are being stripped away. They come up in unexpected ways when we think we've dealt with them, when we think we're done with it, and lo and behold, there's a little manifestation. Also manifesting in our physical bodies as forms of discomfort, which leave us feeling as though pains come and go, whether they are muscular or skeletal. But these are remnants of energetic patterns, also affecting our chakras. Once we clear these final frequencies related to the past, then we are actually in a better position to, or we are bared, if you like, and ready to start the claiming of the light body in the fifth dimension. Also good to note that the impacts to the various, from the remnants of these different energies impact our physical, emotional, and mental bodies. So old patterns coming up, beliefs, thought processes, ways of perceiving ourselves, as well as emotional stuff, and also, of course, the physical discomforts that I've mentioned. So Spirit tells me that the claiming of the fifth dimensional body basically enables greater consciousness for us in the fifth dimension, and is really the truer manifestation of our fifth dimensional experience. So we know for a while that humanity is moving towards the fifth dimension, and we're essentially activating there. But this is the first time we're getting some kind of insight into what that actually means. So by claiming our fifth dimensional body, we are really stepping into the ability to operate through our own light bodies. In other words, our own spiritual truth. It's important to understand the nature of the fifth dimension also. The fifth dimension, if I were to describe it to you, can be perceived as a vast plain which looks like an arid landscape, almost desert-like in its structure, and positioned at different points in the fifth dimension are these various crystalline structures, which are essentially different types of consciousness. They're different forms of consciousness. Now, what happens in the past is that we would align ourselves quite unconsciously with one of these crystalline structures and actually start vibrating with its frequency in the fifth dimension. So that means that we link into or we align with a type of consciousness, and it influences us. It has its own perceptions, its own beliefs, its various associations, and our vibration then links into that, and we start functioning through that group consciousness. Now, the activation of the light body in the fifth dimension means that we stop doing the sort of unconscious alignment thing, and we start consciously choosing to engage the fifth dimensional light body. Now, what does that light body actually look like? It's quite extraordinary. Imagine a crystalline structure that is probably the size of a small room. And when a person claims it, they're literally seated inside of it, and there are various controls that make possible this the movement of ourselves and our consciousness within it. These controls are not like sitting in front of a gaming console. They are controls that are accessed and applied through the movements of our consciousness and our minds. So what's interesting is that when the individual has claimed their light body, and a number of individuals have done this, in the sixth dimension, we actually start to form into much larger crystalline structures as we take on the formations of soul family and soul groupings. So in other words, imagine these sort of angled crystalline structures containing the individual consciousness who is navigating this crystalline body, and that crystalline body in turn fitting in almost like a Lego block, but into something spherical, with many of these different crystalline bodies plugging in to a greater consciousness. And that is how we essentially function energetically in our higher dimensional bodies, our higher self, and which is sixth dimension, and the soul self in the seventh dimension. So extremely interesting. I'm very excited to see these movements. It's definitely steps of significant evolution that are taking place for human beings. Obviously, the light body is activated when the patterning is completed, which means that if we're still sitting in our karmic muck, then we simply cannot activate or access the light body as we should be at this time. So very important to live consciously, very important to operate from truth, light, and love. And yeah, grow. So thank you. Thanks for listening to this. I hope it is meaningful to you, and I really hope that you enjoyed the experience. Thank you.